Now to some of the biggest foreign policy issues of our time as we get word the Obama administration is nearing major decisions on the battle to defeat ISIS, the Iran nuclear showdown, and the crisis in Ukraine. But Secretary of State John Kerry refused to specify the direction those decisions are taking when he testified before a Senate hearing. Joining us now, KT McFarland, Fox News national security analyst and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense in the Reagan administration. ISIS is dominating the headlines right now. Right. They have managed to leverage a relatively small fighting force into something that really concerns Americans. So the Obama administration is apparently ready to announce something. This president has been loath to send in large numbers of ground troops. What's it going to be? What are his options?
You know, I think they think that it's going to be a job summit's going to take care of part of it, and they're going to do some bombing, and maybe they'll throw 1,000 or so troops at it. But it's a much bigger problem than this, John. ISIS represents, it's not just ISIS, it's Boko Haram, it's Al-Shabaab, it's Al-Qaeda, and they represent an ideology of extremist, violent, radical jihad, which says we want to destroy Western civilization. So to solve the problem, to defeat them, because they won't be deterred, to defeat them you need an economic, a diplomatic, a military, an alliance component. And so far, the administration isn't talking about that big picture. They're just talking about little here, a little there. And even my conservative friends who I admire, they're talking about only the military part of the solution. It's got to be the kind of comprehensive effort we had to defeat the existential enemies of the Nazis during World War II and the communists during the Cold War.
So who runs that effort?
Well, the only country that can run that is us. We're the only country capable of leading. Let's just look at what's happened in the last couple of weeks when people have said the ideological fight, you know, no moderate Muslims ever step up. Well, the president of Egypt just stepped up. And he said to his religious leaders, you have to solve this. Just this week, the grand imam of Al-Azhar University, the sort of center, the Vatican of Islamic learning, he went to Saudi Arabia and he said, we've got to reform. So there are other groups and people who are stepping up. But only the United States is in the position of leading. And that doesn't mean hundreds of thousands of American boots on the ground. It means the Americans leading others to put their boots on the ground.
Let's talk about this Iran situation. You know, Iran may be the bigger threat, really, if they get a nuclear weapon. And, you know, all signs indicate that they want to head that direction, despite their protestations. There's talk that the administration is willing to let the Iranians have a weapon or have a program in 10 years, gradually easing off those sanctions?
You need three things for a nuke, okay? You need the fuel, and that's enriched uranium or plutonium. You need a missile to deliver it, and you need a blueprint to pull it all together. The deal that we're talking about with Iran does nothing to limit the missiles, does nothing to limit the blueprint, maybe eliminates or at least delays some of the enriched uranium, but does nothing to eliminate the plutonium. So Iran will become a threshold nuclear power. They will pretend that they're not going to develop nuclear weapons, and we'll pretend to believe them. But the reality is they will ignite a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, and they will introduce nuclear weapons into the same region that you have a genocidal death cult in radical Islam.
Finally, the Ukraine, they are begging for weapons. Should we provide them?
You know, I was in Ukraine in the spring, and I talked to a number of Ukrainians. They are willing to fight to the finish. I also last week sat with a senior Russian diplomat and leader, and he said they're going to fight to the finish. The West is not going to. So Ukraine is sort of caught in this tug-of-war between East and West. My feeling, if the Ukrainians want to fight for their freedom, we should give them the tools to do it, understanding the outcome may not change, but the price to the Russians will be very high, and it may deter them for the next step.
The Soviets eventually withdrew from Afghanistan because they were paying too high a price.
And that's the example to think of. It's Afghanistan is Ukraine, Russia's new Afghanistan.
All right. KT McFarland, thank you.